the mindfulness that the Buddha teaches is to be mindful of the Eightfold Path, to integrate that into our lives as the path to awakening or gaining full human maturity. The Buddha awakened to dependent origination, which states from ignorance of these Four Noble Truths, all manner of confusion, deluded thinking, and ongoing disappointing experiences arise. So the first noble truth is that dukkha occurs. Dukkha describes the common human experience that, if rooted in ignorance, causes a mind that reacts to the ever-changing nature of the world. And so, again, dukkha describes an experience of everything from mild disappointment all the way to extreme physical and emotional suffering. That initial profound statement is to show us that that is a natural occurrence of having a human life. Dukkha will occur. And if we can gain an understanding of the nature of suffering, we'll stop reacting to it and stop insisting that our life experience be any different than what is simply occurring. That's a profound understanding of impermanence. In order to understand impermanence, we have to understand who and what we think we are and what we're basing our beliefs in self on. That's the second mark of existence. Impermanence is the first. The second is anatta, the not self characteristic. And because of a misunderstanding of the first two, dukkha occurs. The second noble truth is craving originates and clinging perpetuates suffering, and it's craving for continued existence based on wrong view, and then clinging to those views once that initial view is established. That's conditioned thinking. It's a modern term for that would be confirmation bias. We're biased towards seeing the world and experiencing the world in a way that confirms the views that we've already developed. Now remember, those views from an unawakened human being are rooted in ignorance and can only lead to further ignorance. The third noble truth is that cessation of that process is possible. Again, it points directly to impermanence. It also points to the insubstantiality of anatta, the not self characteristic. If this thing that we think is permanent can only remain permanent, there's no chance of changing it, is it? If that was a truth, we'd like to believe that we can establish a permanent self in an impermanent realm, but obviously that's impossible. The fourth noble truth is that the path leading to the cessation of suffering is the Eightfold Path. These are the Buddha's words from the article you just read this week, not the article, the chapter. And notice how this relates directly to Four Noble Truths. And again, you've heard me say this hundreds of times. Everything the Buddha taught is taught in the context of dependent origination and Four Noble Truths, Buddha's words. And what is right view? Knowledge with regard to stress, meaning knowledge with regard to dukkha. Makes sense, doesn't it? The Buddha first described the problem, then he taught that the solution to the problem is gaining an understanding where there was once ignorance of stress, of dukkha. Gaining knowledge of it brings that to cessation. Knowledge with regard to stress, knowledge with regard to the origination of stress. We understand the contributions that we're making to our own deluded thinking. Where once we were ignorant, we now understand. It's an awakened human mind. Knowledge with regard to the cessation of stress, which means that we've had the actual experience of it. Whether it's momentary in our meditation practice or off our cushion from a well-concentrated mind, or in a mind established in right view, meaning an ongoing freedom from stress, a mind of calm and peace, which is how the Buddha described an awakened mind. Knowledge with regard to the path or practice that develops the cessation of stress. This is called right view. So notice how right view is now taught as an overarching way of looking at ourselves in relation to the world that is rooted in profound understanding or profound wisdom. And again, we develop it directly through the Eightfold Path. When you read this paragraph, or even almost any paragraph in any sutta, and understand it in the proper context, the entire Dhamma teaching is included in there, isn't it? And it points directly to the path developing that type of understanding, the Eightfold Path. The Buddha was unwavering in that. Everything he ever taught as a path to awakening is included in the Eightfold Path. He never taught anything outside of that path. He never taught anything as an adaptation or an accommodation or an embellishment to the path. The reason why I'm saying that, he didn't teach any type of rites or rituals or beliefs or appealing to deities or gods as a path. He never taught to engage with your mala beads continually. I'm not putting that practice down. It's just not included as part of the Eightfold Path. The Buddha was incredibly clear, out of great compassion, to show exactly what the path was and also show exactly what it wasn't. And again, I say that out of great compassion because it would be cruel, not that an awakened human being is possible that, but it would be cruel to have an understanding of the clear and direct path to awakening and then cloud it up with a lot of embellishments, wouldn't it? If I knew the safest way to get across the street was to look both ways and then go, but I told you, before you cross the street, make sure a bus is coming, that would be cruel, wouldn't it? And adding anything to the Dhamma is, to me, it's that, even if it's rooted in ignorance, is that type of cruelty. The Buddha expressed his compassion as an awakened human being for 45 years by being clear and consistent with his Dhamma. Does he understand what was at stake? The Buddha continues a little further on by declaring that right view is the forerunner. I mean, it's the right view is the culmination of the Eightfold Path, but it's also the entry point. So the Buddha says, and how is right view the forerunner? One discerns wrong view as wrong view. What does that mean? It simply means that we accept that the view that I'm holding of myself in relation to the world is a wrong view. It's not working. Excuse me. Or it's not answering my questions. It's not providing a satisfactory view of the world. And every one of us eventually came here because we felt that something was missing in our lives, or we didn't quite understand who we were. And we wanted some answers. We wanted to understand, why do I, at least at times, have such an agitated mind? Why do I seem in conflict at times with other people, or even with myself? Where does that come from? How can I understand that? So it points us to another direction, another way of looking at the world. That's the beginning of accepting that we have wrong view. We understand wrong view is wrong view. But it's simple and direct teaching, isn't it? One discerns wrong view as wrong view, and right view is right view. That also points to the beginning of right view and the culmination of right view. And the Buddha described an awakened human being in reference to right view. He says, right view is a view that completely and profoundly and at a penetrative level understands the nature of stress and the origination of stress. The beginning of right view is, if we're fortunate enough to come across the Buddha's teaching, we're all here, to start inclining our minds, to start developing wholeheartedly the Eightfold Path, so that we can gain super mundane. That's mundane right view. We go from that view to super mundane, or a completely developed right view. We understand right view as right view. This is one's right view. The Buddha doesn't just leave us there, though. He describes how to understand wrong view. And what is wrong view? There is nothing giving, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed. That last word, most people only want to hear that. Even in modern Buddhism, we understand we have to let go. What is the Buddha referring to? Keep it in context. There's nothing sacrificed in relation to the wrong views that we're clinging to. There's nothing sacrificed in relation to the ignorance that we are stuck in. Remember, the Buddha's teaching in an overarching way is to empty ourselves of ignorance by recognizing that ignorance and letting it go, by developing knowledge where there was once ignorance. That's the most important teachings on emptiness. Empty ourselves of ignorance. So in order to do that, we have to be willing to let go, to sacrifice all of those views. That's what the Buddha is referring to. There's nothing given. We're not willing to let go of anything. I'm so stuck. I'm so attached, clinging to these views that I've used to establish myself, no matter how much suffering they bring me. I'm not willing to let go any of them. And the reason why that is because we're conditioned to believe that the views that we hold of ourselves define ourselves. So it often feels like annihilation when we start letting go of these views. How can I continue to establish myself in the world? What if there's conflict? How do I maintain my presence? How am I noticed? How do I keep my views flowing? If those views are causing you suffering, the mindful thing is to let go of the views, not attempting to continue to establish a self that is rooted in wrong views. It only leads to more stress and suffering. Is that clear? Any questions here? There is no fruit or result of good or bad actions. The Buddha is talking about karma here. The fruit of good or bad actions is recognizing that karma means actions, is that my actions in this moment are continuing ignorance. I'm continuing to use my actions to ignore my own ignorance, or I'm recognizing, and we talk about this all the time, it's how important it is to recognizing the practical effects of integrating the Eightfold Path. I'm recognizing that I'm changing. I'm letting go of my wrong views and I'm developing right view. And I recognize it because my mind is less in conflict. I'm more at peace. I'm more calm. I'm not contributing to my own suffering. That's the forerunner of developing the Dhamma. That's why I talk about it, how important it is to recognize, even at the seemingly most insignificant level, that we're changing, that we're actually developing the Eightfold Path. In a very practical way, the reason why that's so important is that by recognizing what's working, we start changing our mind towards that. If we simply dismiss it as happenstance or circumstance, or don't even notice it because our minds aren't well concentrated enough to notice it, we won't continue down the path. There's always, in each and every moment in our life, there's a sign, there's a significant experience that shows us whether our minds are inclined towards awakening or not. But we have to be well concentrated enough to see it, and we have to have the proper framework. That's what the Eightfold Path provides, to understand what's occurring and the consequences of what's occurring in our mind right now. How we're seeing ourselves, what we're holding in mind. Right view is the forerunner. This next refers to rebirth. What are we giving birth to in this moment? I'll go back that one sentence. There is no fruit or result of good or bad actions. There is no this world, no next world. The Buddha's not getting into something mystical here, and he's not talking about a future birth in so much as he's talking about this world is this present moment, and the next world is the next moment. And what he's referring to is not understanding the process of becoming. If we're ignoring what's occurring in this moment, we certainly cannot influence in any way what's going on in the next moment, can we? But when we develop the Eightfold Path, at least even initially, we now have a framework to incline our minds towards awakening each and every moment. And then each moment is a moment that we can become less ignorant and incline our minds towards awakening. Again, you could say that the entire Dhamma is in each and every one of these sentences, not just in the paragraph itself. Is that clear too? And it's some of these phrases. Now remember, this is all originally was in Pali. This is in an English translation directly from the Pali, I believe. I think this is one of Tanasero's translations. But it still shows that if you're lacking the context, you could start taking these teachings and apply mysticism to it. Well, the Buddha's talking about an ongoing, limitless, eon-long examination, and that's not what he's talking about. He taught, and the reason why I can say that is he taught a Dhamma for people to awaken right now in this moment, or at least in this human lifetime, not in the future. You have to have the context. In this world or the next world, no mother, no father. What does it mean? The Buddha's not saying that we don't come from human parents. In fact, what he's saying is to recognize that a mother and father contribute to your physical birth. If there's no mother and if there's no understanding of the process of birth, then I'm not understanding the internal mother and father that I have, that I'm using to give birth to the next moment. There's no understanding of the ongoing process of becoming, is what the Buddha is referring to. No mother, no father, no spontaneously reborn beings. Of course, the Buddha is not talking about people popping up all over the place in some chaotic way. In context, a spontaneously reborn being is me rooted in ignorance, spontaneously giving birth to another moment rooted in ignorance, or with a mind well framed in the Eightfold Path, each moment is a spontaneously new moment rooted in the wisdom of the Eightfold Path. No Brahmins or contemplatives. Brahmins has a lot of different terms. In this context, the Buddha is simply referring about people that are looking to develop the Eightfold Path. No Brahmins or contemplatives who faring rightly and practicing rightly. Another such an important line. The Buddha's teaching there that there's a right way to practice, framed by the Eightfold Path, and there's a wrong way that won't lead to awakening. But these folks are practicing rightly, and they proclaim this world and the next, this moment and the next moment, after having directly known and realized it for themselves. What a clear and direct teaching. The Buddha is again emphasizing the importance of the Eightfold Path as the framework for developing a life of lasting peace and happiness. Now, talking about right view specifically, he's also saying that the Eightfold Path is the establishment of right view. Does everybody understand that? That right view isn't just one aspect, but it's an overarching aspect of the Eightfold Path. In other words, when we're engaged in right speech, we'll talk about the virtuous factors next week. When we're engaged in right speech, it's as a result of at least initial right view. There's no longer a need to defend myself or lie or gossip or any of that other idle chatter, because I'm understanding that there's a right view and a right way and a wrong way of looking at myself in relation to the world. It's framed by that. The next factor of the Eightfold Path, the second factor, the second wisdom factor, is right intention. Right intention follows right view, and right intention relates directly to the second noble truth. Craving originates and clinging perpetuates suffering. Well, then right intention is the intention to recognize and abandon craving and clinging. And that's rooted, or at least motivated, from an initial right view, isn't it? Why would I want to change my thinking or my response to anything unless I had an inclination of where I wanted my mind to go? And so now I develop the intention to recognize where I'm losing my mind due to craving and clinging. Where is my mindlessness coming from? Because I'm lacking the intention to overcome it in this moment as life occurs. And that is an impossible task unless we have the proper framework, and we have a mind that is rooted in concentration. And that leads to right meditation. Why we meditate? Because we need a measure of concentration to even begin this process of recognizing and maintaining right view through the entire Eightfold Path. It's just one more quote that I want to touch on. Buddha referring to, let me go back a little bit. So how do we develop this path? And this also relates to right mindfulness, which we'll get into in 2 weeks, but I want to introduce it here as this relates to right view. One tries to abandon wrong view and enter into remain in right view. This is one's right effort. That type of mindfulness is implying how important it is to recognize when we're stuck in wrong view. And one of the reasons why I say always be gentle with ourselves and not to judge ourselves, simply to recognize that based on the framework of the Eightfold Path that I've integrated, I now have a way to recognize when I'm stuck in wrong view. And what do I do with it? I don't analyze it. I don't judge myself. I take that acknowledgement that I'm in an experience of wrong view, and I use my understanding to enter and remain in right view in that instant, as it occurs. And it's easy. I think it might have been Lorna that said this last week, but I'm not sure. No, Maura said it. That saying it this way implies that it's so easy that all you have to do is do it. That's why there's an entire Eightfold Path. But ultimately, what you have to do is just do it. It takes a process of developing in order to just do it, though, doesn't it? But we have to start where we are. Again, that's that the overarching Dhamma in a well-concentrated mind allows us to begin wherever we are, and also recognize the importance to begin wherever we are. No matter where we are, no matter what's occurring in our mind, if we can bring our mind into what's occurring and frame it by the Eightfold Path, then this moment is the beginning of awakening. And when we fall off the path, it's a good reason why it's called a path, all that we have to do is step back on the path. How do we do it? Look back to the Eightfold Path.
And that's right intention.
That's right intention. It's also right effort, and we'll talk more about that. Yes.
Present moment.
Yep. Again, the intention to recognize and abandon wrong views or the experience of wrong view. What do I do with it? I enter and remain now in right view. And initially, because we don't have most of us don't have an overarching understanding of the Eightfold Path, that initial right view is, okay, I'm off the path. I'm not seeing things clearly. What do I do? Well, for most of us, it might be to take a breath and then to start bringing to mind as best as we can in that moment what we understand about the Eightfold Path. How does it apply to this moment? Why am I in conflict? Why am I having a disappointing experience and wanting that to be different? Because I'm not seeing things clearly. Remember that quote by Lao Tzu, once you understand the impermanence of all things, you'll let go of everything, meaning that in this moment, I don't need it to be any different than it is because I understand the nature of impermanence. When you understand the nature of impermanence, you also understand the nature of the lack of substantiality in anything that's occurring. Even though it might seem very stressful, very powerful, we might be taking it in the moment very personal, but that's only because of wrong view. Let me just continue a little bit more. This is one's right effort. One is mindful, we hold in mind. One is mindful to abandon wrong view and enter and remain in right view. This is one's right mindfulness. These three qualities, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness, run and circle around right view. They're all necessary and necessary aspects of a fully awakened right view. The Buddha continues, in a person of wrong view, wrong resolve or wrong intention comes into being. And what is that? That's why I say that there's such subtle but very powerful strategies to continue to ignore our own ignorance. Because in wrong view, we are maintaining in a very unforgiving way. That's not the right word. We are maintaining in a relentless way wrong intention. It's the defining aspects of a mind rooted in ignorance to continue, meaning to have the intention to ignore its own ignorance. Listen to that line again in that context. In a person of wrong view, wrong intention comes into being. What else could there be? How else could it, another way of saying that is, and this is the reason why the Buddha taught an Eightfold Path, a mind that is rooted in delusion cannot understand that it's deluded, can it? It's the nature of delusion to not recognize, to ignore your own delusion. And again, I'm not talking about a completely deluded mind that has fallen into psychoses and psychotic behavior, although it's possible to recover from that. I'm talking about the ordinary and common human problem of a lack of understanding of the way things are. And that lack of understanding is rooted in a conditioned response to continue that lack of understanding, because that's the only way to establish, to continue to maintain a self rooted in ignorance. If you don't want to understand a safe way to cross the street, you're not going to listen to the guy that says, wait a minute, there's a bus coming. You'll just walk out, won't you? And all kinds of suffering can follow from that because you know how to cross the street. Obviously you don't, because you keep getting hit by buses.
How lucky to be hit by a bus more than once. Or not.
Or not.
My buses just made me laugh.
Well, most of us, I would say every one of us, keep doing the same things that allow us ourselves to keep getting hit by a bus, even though it hurts like hell. You know, obviously the bus is metaphorical in most cases, but not every case. Why do we keep doing it? Why do we keep getting hit by the bus of ignorance? Because it's the nature of ignorance to ignore its own ignorance. That's really the problem. And it's when you think about it from a not overly serious view, you really get to see the absurdity of maintaining a self, isn't it? And life unfolds in that absurd way, that we keep doing things. I mean, look, we've had an established history for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And the defining, read any history book, the defining underlying theme in human history is conflict. In fact, we refer to periods in time, not usually in great achievement, although sometimes we do. It's usually in reference to conflict. And why hasn't it changed? Because we keep getting hit by the bus. In fact, we like it. We encourage it. Because when the bus smacks us, at least in that instant, anatta is fully alive, even though it's reacting. It's no more present than in that reacting moment when great chaos is following. One of the reasons why meditation works as a foundation for developing a calm and peaceful mind is in that moment of peace and calm. When we're there, there's no I-making. And that's what leads to ongoing peace and calm. The essence of the Eightfold Path. Let me go back. I promise not to comment anymore so I can get through this. And a person of wrong view, wrong resolve, or wrong intention comes into being. And a person of wrong intention, wrong speech. I have to comment. Notice how this leads into the virtuous factors. But we're engaged in wrong intention. We're going to be saying things that are unskillful and are used to promote I-make or continue our own ignorance. And we'll justify. I mean, that's how argument goes. And a person of wrong intention, wrong speech, and a person of wrong speech, wrong action. Right? This leads into next week. And a person of wrong action, wrong livelihood. And we'll justify all of those wrong or unskillful thoughts, words, and deeds, won't we? And a person of wrong livelihood, wrong effort, and a person of wrong effort, wrong mindfulness. And a person of wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration. And a person of wrong concentration, wrong knowledge. And in a person of wrong knowledge, wrong release, meaning that we might be developing something that's not framed by the Eightfold Path, and it makes us feel good. We get a temporary or momentary release from the suffering in our own minds. And so we then attach ourselves to that. So that's a useful path. A good example, an extreme example, would be addiction or compulsive behavior. Because every time we take a drink or smoke a joint, I feel good. That must be a reasonable response to my life. And because I'm unique, it's reasonable, it's justifiable. Or eating a whole chocolate cake, or engaging in constant distractions such as my Twitter account or something else, pornography, too much golf, too much idle chatter, always talking with other people or always conversing. Anything we can do seems acceptable. In fact, necessary in the moment because it makes us feel good. But that's wrong release, isn't it? Because we're just compensating for our own ignorance. We're not doing anything to address it directly. One of the reasons why people have such a difficult time integrating the Eightfold Path and even beginning a meditation practice because it insists that we take an honest look at ourselves and take responsibility for how we're thinking and feeling. And a self-referential ego self doesn't want to do that. And that's why I say that the Eightfold Path is a path of ease and joy, but it's not for the faint of heart. We have to be willing to wholeheartedly engage with this Eightfold Path, beginning with that right view. And that right view is so important. The mundane right view points our mind towards change, towards recognizing our own conditioned thinking so that we can develop a calm and peaceful mind. And what follows that is right intention, the intention in this moment, to recognize whether my mind is inclined towards awakening or is it stuck and rooted in ignorance. So that's today's talk. Thank you. Before we go around the room, any questions about today's talk? Or about how important it is to establish right view and right intention as the beginning and entry point into the Dhamma. And so maybe that's what we can discuss as we go around. Jen, good to see you this morning.
Good to see you. I went home and read chapter 3 and then part of chapter 4 after not doing my homework last week and feeling bad about it.
Don't feel bad about it.
And I didn't read all of chapter 4 in the beginning of the week. I just read part of it, but that was enough to kind of get me to set the tone for the week. Yeah. And then I read the rest of it last night and it kind of like brought some things together for me. And then today's talk really helped kind of bring some other things to light. And it's really ultimately identifying or I'm making with regard to the Eightfold Path.
Yes.
And how I'm overcomplicating it in my own eye making.
Yeah.
And sort of starting to recognize that, and which initially was like really frustrating and really, which, you know, is more eye making. But then as I think I had a conversation with Matt, and he suggested, you know, even before he said it, I started to realize that it was like the middle way was kind of what to do. And so now that's been helpful. It's like, because I start over analyzing, trying to find that right release. And so I'm clinging or chasing that release, and it makes things really complicated. And you know, like you were saying, coming back to that, just coming back to what's happening now, is just like the only thing you can do. But it's so easy to forget that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you said that, there was two other things. I think for the first time ever, I heard you say that the first noble truth is the interplay of the three marks of existence. Did you actually say that?
Yeah, that's what suffering arises. That's why the insight that we develop is specific to that.
Yeah, so that was the first time I ever heard that. I'm sure you've said it a million times, but so that was interesting.
John, can you repeat what you just said?
The first noble truth is looking at the interplay between the three marks of existence, where dukkha, anatta, and stress, not self, and impermanence. Looking at that is like the first noble truth. And then the other thing was that you were saying that the Buddha is only trying to be clear, and that it would be almost cruel to add to it. And I was just sitting here thinking about, even listening to you talk about stuff, I see myself getting like excited to say the next thing, or to come up with some other awesome way to say what you said another way, and like make myself look great. And I'm like, wow, that's a whole lot of things going on. So there's already that happening. So to kind of like not be distracted by that and hear what you're saying is tough enough. So to be adding a bunch of mystical stuff to it on your part would just be, I wouldn't be hearing anything.
Or you would attach to the
Right.
mystical, because that's where we can continue to establish a self in a realm that can't be described. Well, I'll put myself there. That's really the problem with it. But what you're describing, making it complicated, recognizing that you're doing that, is what the Buddha refers to as being mindful of wrong view, and then you're taking your understanding and you're entering right view in that moment. That's the Dhamma. That's how it plays out. It's so even in your mind, it feels like conflict because that's your familiar attachment to that.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're really developing, and what's important to recognize that you're doing, is that you're actually changing. And I mean, Matt's brilliant to point that back to the middle way. And the middle way is the balance between those extreme views of, boy, what a mess I am, or trying to adapt it to fit a view. Walking that middle way that allows us to see what's occurring clearly, to be mindful of wrong view and enter and remain in right view. Thank you for saying that. And experiencing it, developing a Dhamma long or deep enough to do that, to recognize it. Good for you. Becky, good to see you this morning.
Good to see you, John. Well, I've been reading the Truth of Happiness chapter, and I've also been listening to some of your talks about this that you've given in the past. So listening, doing that is very helpful to me, to listen and read. And going through this the second time, I'm just barely starting to get a, not understanding, but a realization of how simple but difficult this is. That you just have to keep slowly working away at it, and it's not something that's I mean, like a lifetime. It's a process.
Mm.
But in the past week, I have had times where I feel like it's finally starting to percolate into my daily life without me having to sort of stop and think about it, or stop and take a breath. Or there was a couple of times that I really was like surprised by it. I mean, it's little teeny moments. But like, I was in the car with my husband and he said something that would normally make me have that, and that just like slightly started. And then I was like, I don't know what I said to myself, or I don't know what I did. I just said, it was like, this is like not you, or this is not a reaction that's necessary, or something like it was like. And then I just let it go. It just went away, and it was like
foam on the ocean.
Than what I would normally do. And then, all of this happens in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And then my husband was still talking. Then I was able to listen to what he was saying and answer him in a way that was, lovely. It turned into a conversation instead of a bickering match, I guess you could say. And it was really, really wonderful to just have that one little thing that happened. Then for the rest of that day, because I had that, I felt like what it was like, you could then at least have a feeling of what you were after. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Because the words start the thinking process. And when you're meditating, you're thinking about your breath, and you're trying to make sure that when you go off in a thought, you come back to your breath. But all the words don't really do it until you actually have some sort of an experience where it works. Because then you know what it means. You feel it.
You had the experience.
You feel it. You know what it means.
Yeah. Ahead of see. Come and see for yourself. You have to have the experience.
You know that it really is possible.
Yeah.
And you know that it's right.
Yeah, and Becky, there's nothing insignificant about, even though it was a minor incident, that's profoundly significant. Yeah, it's not small. It's the being able to recognize in that brief moment the significance of it is the essence of mindfulness. You are mindful of wrong view, wrong speech, wrong action, and you entered and remained in right speech. That's practicing the Dhamma in its most practical way, and it's only because you've integrated the entire Eightfold Path. And you've had the practical experience of it working. That's so important.
Right. That for me is like, that's the thing that you have to have before you can really, know what you're doing.
Yeah, and now you know what you're doing.
So now you know what you're doing.
So the,
I know what
the, the unfortunate,
I know at least what I'm trying to do.
well,
And
that's what I was
I'm
going to
sure
say.
that there's all more layers that I haven't even,
Well,
I'm gonna.
the difficulty that you mentioned is also to be seen as part of the First Noble Truth. The difficulty is part of dukkha. Difficulty experiencing during Dhamma practice is not because the Dhamma practice is difficult, it's because the conditioned aspects of our mind that are occurring in that moment are making it difficult.
Right.
Those conditioned aspects of mind are as impermanent as anything else. And they are, as you experience there, they're like foam on the ocean. There's nothing really there. Come back to what's occurring. What's really occurring. And what is remarkable is then what you said, you were able to continue a conversation with your husband rather than have it devolve into conflict.
Rather than react.
Yeah. And to me, that's astounding. So thank you for sharing it, and thank you for having the experience. Anthony, good to see you.
Good morning. I'm just curious, Becky. Did your husband notice it, or was there any reaction?
Mm-mm.
So that kind of shows that it wasn't
No,
really
because
that
there was
important to
nothing
him.
there.
He
No,
wasn't trying to.
absolutely not important to him in any way, shape, or form. It was all me. It was all me.
Yeah. And it kind of like it sort of gelled for me when you were talking about right view. Like I was finally starting to get it. That I always knew that like gossip and hate stuff would ruin your meditation or affect you, but I wasn't sure about the relationship between right view and right speech, and I was finally getting it. It was like, it's because if you don't have right view, then you're not accepting. So anytime you're gossiping or speaking really badly about someone, it's because of a flaw inside of yourself. Because if you truly accepted, you wouldn't have this need to judge and communicate with that kind of gossip.
Exactly.
And it just made perfect sense to me. Like I heard the other day, someone said if you are pointing a finger at someone, there's always 3 fingers going back at you.
Yeah.
And I realized that, like, all right, that makes sense to me.
Boy, in light of all the political rhetoric on both sides, you could say that that's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, Anthony, it's so significant and profound that you recognize it, because that's the progression or the integration of the Eightfold Path, to understand that right speech has right view as a requirement, almost like dependent origination goes the other way. In order to develop the entire Eightfold Path, this is what this week is on. We have to have a mundane understanding of right view and right intention, and it leads to the rest of it. And again, I was talking about this Thursday night too, but this happens so often in here. One of the reasons why you see me get maybe overly excited is that we are actually integrating the Eightfold Path. We're not just meditating. We're not just practicing something. We're integrating it because each and every one of us is talking about these experiences of integrating the Eightfold Path, having a practical experience. That's how it's meant to be. And in that way, there's nothing difficult about it, is there? We just have to do it. And it happens from our own right efforts. We'll get into that in 2 weeks.
It's interesting because what Becky said just kind of added to what I was thinking is that not only is it just accepting somebody else, but most of the time they're not even looking to cause any problems.
Mostly, yeah. Usually those problems that's a profound statement. If we let other people just say what they want to say without us needing to tell them how wrong they are, there'd be no conflict, would there? There's a middle way there. There's sometimes when people's thoughts, words, and deeds are harming us in some way, and it's appropriate at that point to use the Eightfold Path to say, wait a minute, the Buddha wasn't a pacifist. The Buddha was a realist. And so what that means is that we respond to life within the framework of the Eightfold Path. And when someone is acting towards us in a way that is hurtful, there's a responsibility to not allow that, because then we're giving tacit approval to their own continued poor behavior. But there's a right way to do it. There's a middle way to practice and maintain a life free of conflict, even though we might be speaking up for ourselves at times, but in a way that is framed by the Eightfold Path, not in a way that is I-making. And again, I don't want to go too far off, but I know that you're integrating that into your law practice, which is really remarkable. Walking that middle way in an environment that is intended to be antagonistic. And I know you do it. So
Try.
yeah. Well, I've seen some of the articles that you wrote. I mean, they're really remarkable. It shows that even in an environment that is designed to be antagonistic, to have conflict in it, you can walk the middle way, can't you? That's really remarkable. You should talk about that sometimes. Thank you, Anthony. Jay, good to see you tonight.
Thanks. Becky, I'm glad you came up with a cure for dealing with an exasperating husband. Clueless in, because I think I'm often exasperated, whether she tells me that or whether she just sits there and lets it float by.
We get to hear from Lisa next.
I don't even remember what he said, and it would only be exasperating to me. I mean, it was totally.
Well, you were the only one there for him to respond to. So I mean,
It was
you were
very
doing it in the car,
innocent
some
comment.
drugs.
And if it can happen there in a car,
Right.
it can happen in the world, can't it?
Well, I'm here every week or most weeks, and I'd say I'm hot on the trail.
You are. You
I'm gonna
are.
put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I don't have that much to say, but that's the gist of it. Is I'm working on it.
Yeah, that's the beginning of right view and developing the Eightfold Path. You first have to put yourself in a position to develop the Dhamma. How else can you learn anything unless you open yourself up to it? So good for you. I'm glad you're here this morning.
Thank you.
Lisa, how are you? How are you? And how's Jay in the car?
Long-term relationships and familial relationships that you have whole life, there's bound to be conflict.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this before, there's just so many things that we call human nature. It's so vast. To me, I probably complicate things, but there's so many different kinds of human nature and what you may call, I don't know if it's instinctual or natural reactions to things, and everybody's different. So certain things in long-term relationships like will annoy the person just because that's who they are. But it's how you react to that.
Yeah.
And I think in long-term marriages or friendships, there's people are practicing Buddhism and don't know it. For some people, it comes more naturally than others. Some people just invite conflict in their lives. We've all must have met people who just have this natural antagonistic, and I don't know, it's like they don't even know it's subtle aggression in everything they say, like one-upmanship. I don't think they even know they're doing it.
Yep.
And I don't know exactly why they do it, to make themselves better. I don't think they'd even say that that's why they're doing it. They're saying things. Some people are practicing Buddhism, but they don't know anything about Buddhism because it's just their nature to be able to let things go. For other people, like me, and growing up and up to this point, I would take offense and overreact.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think something in the aging process calms kind of the human nature part of it. I've calmed down. And I don't think that I could have understood anything about this many years ago. Because I just had so many layers of walls and fabrications and fake stuff. And not understanding a thing. So it's coming at the right time in my life. And it's a really great thing. I don't understand a lot of it. I do and I don't.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you understand enough. And again, just like Jay, just like all of us, you start where you are. And that's the beginning of right view, which leads to fully awakened, fully developed right view. And seeing things that way and understanding that the diversity in the common human condition is important too. And all of that comes under the overarching umbrella of dukkha occurs. It happens in the world. It's just part of being in the world. So thank you. Debbie, good to see you.
It's good to see you too. I was just thinking about what Lisa just said in terms of, I think for me it's not just familial or long-term relationships. I mean, it's like if I have to call and deal with an insurance company or a credit card thing or something, and those people, if the person I'm talking to is like short or
Stupid.
not
She just say
helpful.
insurance company.
So it's hard for me. I'm recognizing that I have to change. That would bring on a reaction. Like, look, I need help, and you're just throwing it back in my face, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, so I'm feeling vulnerable probably when you're asking for help, right, or assistance. So I'm just thinking about this now, how I tend to get aggressive in my response, feeling like I'm not going to be hurt if I don't, and so that's something to be aware of, because I don't want to feed that. I mean, or become where they're at. If I'm not giving a helpful response, if I'm giving a neutral response, then maybe it won't escalate, or it'll be helpful for them too, the experience and the end all of that. I'm just thinking about this now. Anyway, sometimes I have little breakthroughs like Becky's talking about, but I think lots of times I'm still not getting it till after the fact, and I have to try not to get discouraged by that.
Yes.
It's good when Becky brought that up. It's like, okay, I have to focus more on the times that I am aware and I am with breakthroughs, so that can feed feed me to move forward and to want to keep going and not get discouraged. Anyway, I don't have a lot to say.
Debbie, you said a lot. It's so important to recognize the little breakthroughs, because they're not little. They're major. It's what the Buddha talked about here. You're being mindful of the entire path in that way. And that's how it's developed. It's not developed from reading it and then just being perfect, meaning perfect in relation to the Eightfold Path. It's recognizing and abandoning through right view and right intention when our behavior is hurting ourselves and others in some way, when it's outside of the framework of the Eightfold Path. That's why the path was taught, so we can use it to frame our behavior in thought, word, and deed. And we're all talking about that. It's remarkable.
Even with the neighbor mowing the lawn when you don't want him to mow the lawn, or, it's like, so there's always going to be things that annoy us, little things. So can I just think, okay, that's annoying me, and I don't have to be annoyed. I can choose to think differently about it. I can choose to, step back and not be annoyed.
Yeah. And recognize that the annoyance is coming from insisting that the neighbor not be mowing the lawn at 6 a.m. But also communication can be part of it. Right speech is, again, we're not pacifists. It's not wrong speech to go over and talk to your neighbor about that. That's how we live in the world. But to do it in a way that we don't take it personal. But it's okay to state your case. Would you mind? Blah, blah, blah. You got me thinking about what happened to that, I think it's a Senator, Rand Paul, that his neighbor beat him up because he was cutting the lawn at the wrong time, something like that. Wow. But that's an example of it.
Just let me say that later that day, I was yelling at a healthcare professional on the phone. Just so you know, there's some triggers. That, yeah.
Even a calm and peaceful mind is impermanent, isn't it?
There's another,
Thank you for sharing that too, Becky. Yeah.
one other factor. Work construction, a lot of times when you want somebody to get somebody to do something they don't want to do or whatever, you have to act like you're losing your mind. If you just go up and politely ask them and explain that you'd like them to do something, they won't do it. But if you go and act like you're freaking out, and they do it. So sometimes overreacting for effect can be a technique.
Could. Or you could fire the guy. Thank you, Jack. Mary, good to see you.
Good to see you. My understanding of right view has clarified quite a bit in listening to your, even though I've read the book at least twice, and now I'm reading it the third time. Right view is taking into account the whole path and the Four Noble Truths, and in every second of your day. I mean, it's hard. But it's, I think it's rewarding to do all this, obviously, or I wouldn't be here as often as I am. But I think it makes one understand that you need to respond and not react.
Yep.
And you get a much more bigger bang for your buck that way.
Yeah, you sure do. Yeah, respond with mindfulness.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of times when I've done this, it takes people aback because they're expecting a reaction.
Yeah.
And they're not getting it, and it disarms them. Two-way street.
Yeah, it certainly does. Especially people that are familiar or that we've had an ongoing relationship that was at times antagonistic.
Yeah.
And we're not that way anymore.
Yes.
But even that is a time to be very gentle with ourselves and them, because that can be bewildering to people that expect a different reaction from us, and we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad you're here this morning. Lorna, good to see you.
I must confess I having a very poor night's sleep. I don't feel a bit tired. But yeah, right view. I mean, we talk about being a stream enter, getting to the shore. It's really holding right view that will get you to the other shore.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I must confess that in the past I have thought of right view, right intention as a leading to the Eightfold Path. That it's not really right view and right intention. It's just like that's the preview for the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the heart of the matter, the more important teachings. And so I've sort of skimmed over right view, right intention in that sense. And really, from what I've gathered, that they say it's holding right view and right intention that sets us on the path and holds us on the path and gets us to the other shore, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, and as long as we stay on the path, the getting to the other shore is assured. Sure, yes.
And then I'd just like to thank Debbie for saying what she said last week about dancing.
Oh.
That I've held that thought in my head for a week, that it's only our thoughts that keep us in a place where we just can't dance. We can dance at any time.
Yeah.
If we change our thoughts. It's always available to us. It's only our thoughts that are making us feel, off color, drab, or whatever. It's only our thoughts, and you can just change it in a flash. And what Debbie said last week, honestly, what you said last week is kind of like hung in there for a week.
Thank you. And again, that's how a Sangha works. It really is remarkable, the support that we give each other just by talking about developing the Dhamma, integrating it into our lives. And that really is remarkable. I've never seen this anywhere in any other Buddhist group. I'm sure it has occurred, but I haven't seen it. There was something you said. Yeah, I got off track, but I'm glad you're here today. Lost my concentration. There was two things I wanted to say. Matt teaches Qigong now on the third Saturday of every month, which is 2 weeks from today at 10:30. And the reason I'm saying it is Qigong, the way Matt has a very profound understanding of right view, and he brings it into his Qigong practice. And it's such a great addition or enhancement to the Dhamma. So, and it on Saturdays, if you want to have a nice quiet morning, taking refuge in this place, the third Saturday of every month, Matt will be here teaching Qigong at 10:30. So right after our Saturday class.
What exactly is Qigong?
You come and ask Matt. I don't mean to put, I'll explain it in as simple terms. And Lorna knows, can talk about it a little, how it enhances the Dhamma. Qigong is it's based on ancient Chinese medicine. It's been around for thousands, maybe 3,000 to 5,000 years. That's how much, excuse me for that. It's been around a long time. And it's a way of using very slow but determined movements to integrate the body and the mind, and to increase, and now this is getting out of the Dhamma a little bit, but to increase the natural flow of energy through our bodies through these very determined and specific gentle exercises. But to me, the most profound part is having a teacher like Matt who knows how it relates to the Dhamma and the way that it really unites the mind and the body, which is really what the Buddhist teaches too. It's not emphasized that way often, but a fully awakened, fully mature human being has united their mind and their body. They're fully present with what's occurring. I would encourage you all of you to at least try it and see what you think. Right, Lorna?
Absolutely. I get an awful lot out of it, I really do. And like you said, the connection that Matt has with the Buddha Dhamma is just so helpful to
Yeah.
You can't describe it. It's like the Dhamma. You can't describe it. You gotta come
Yeah.
see
for yourself.
for yourself.
And to me, another,
It's just if you were to video it and look at people in a room just doing it, you would not think anything's happening. You wouldn't even think anything's happening. But yet you feel just so. You feel the energy and the calmness. And sometimes I've had to actually just stop. I can't do any more. I'm just so full of kind emotions, not tearful emotions, but just thankfulness and gratitude. And I say, I can't describe what it is. I can't tell you what it is. You have to come and see for yourself. But it's really quite an extraordinary hour. And you just don't, it's like the Dhamma, you don't know you're going to meet in the hour. You just don't know how you're going to feel. Or
it really,
Yeah,
please.
I just, it's just like from a kind of pragmatic, practical standpoint, it's like gentle movements. I wouldn't call it stretching. I would say it's more flowing movements and breathing and kind of bringing the movements and the breath and kind of awareness, physical awareness, like being aware of your back, being aware of your organs, just kind of uniting all of that awareness. And he kind of directs that through movement.
Matt understands all the things that he does at a very profound and skillful and useful level. He brings that with him. I still remember the day that me and Matt met over at the Bridge Cafe discussing. This was when this whole place was in transition, and at least for a couple of weeks, there was no Cross River Meditation Center. And we met up, and we knew instantly that we were on the same page. And to me, it's remarkable that my partner in Cross River Meditation Center is so well focused on the Dhamma. I don't know that this place would work the same if it was different than that. So I encourage it if you want to spend a wonderful Saturday morning. The third Saturday of every month is a great time to come here. 2 weeks. The third Saturday of every month is when Matt will be teaching Qigong now at 10:30. So right after our class.
I take Qigong. My Qigong instructor takes Matt's class. And I think she was, I think there was a little hiatus of when he wasn't teaching. And, but she has 2 instructors, and I'm actually taking Tai Chi, which with someone else, but she knows Qigong too. There is a little bit of a relationship with that.
Yeah.
But
Yes, there is.
it's so meditative and gentle. Just
It's a wonderful practice,
it's,
and
it's very repetitive.
it ties in philosophically better than, and I'm not putting down yoga practice, but better than general yoga or in general yoga. The philosophies don't conflict. Anyway, okay. The other, so next week we're going to study the next chapter in the book on the virtuous factors, and you'll see a link in Monday's email. The article or the sutta that I'll be referring to is not the one in the book, like I have been doing. I've been giving, I don't know if you've noticed, the articles that I'm linking to are in addition to what you're reading in the book. I thought, why have you refer back to the book when you already have that? There are other articles. And next week, getting into the virtuous factors, it will be focusing on, the talk will be on the Rahulavada Sutta, where the Buddha is actually teaching his son, his 7-year-old son, right speech, right action. Well, not really right livelihood, but the virtuous factors. And it's one of my favorite suttas. So just, you could look that, when you get the email, you could refer back to the website and use that as part of your study next week. And then I'll give a talk on that. All right, we'll finish like we always do with the Metta Sutta. So find a relaxed meditative posture and gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And again, take a moment to become aware of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on Metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class. And for those online too, peace.